Okay, what's up? I'm back. I am back. So, I was actually thinking of calling this indestructible, but whatever. I just want to jump right into it. It's 10:45. So, today's topic, and I think this is a great jumping point. I was gonna call it indestructible for laughs, for laughs. But today's topic is reading. How do you go about reading opponents? I almost said, how do you read the mind of the opponent? And I laughed at myself. I think it's a pretty good jump off point for something like this. So, first off, what does that question mean? How do you go about reading opponents? That that question, that depends on what you're playing. How do you go about reading opponents? The best way to go about this, the best way to go about this is thinking about situations. Because if you think about it, if you really think about it and what that question is, how do you go about reading your opponents? You're thinking about how that question means to me, just on paper. How do you go about knowing exactly what your opponent is going to do all the time, which is not really possible unless they're really shitty. They're really bad. I should keep this PG. Unless they're really bad, you will have no idea exactly what the opponent is going to do at all times. Exactly. That's the key word though. Exactly. Right? So your first goal is to how do you realistically understand what your opponent can do at any time? That is a lot more reasonable. So there are multiple phases in a match that I want to talk about. So the first and probably one of the most important, probably the most important, is neutral. And I know I talk about neutral a lot. The neutral game. So if you don't know what neutral is, and I hope you do if you're watching this, it's when neither you nor your opponent have a outright advantage over each other. So it's normally when you're running around the street. It is You would think it's hard to understand know exactly what your opponent is doing when they're running around the screen, but it's not impossible because they can if you look at an opponent's moveset, this is how I like to explain it. If you look at their moveset, say for Persona, right? You have A, B, C, D, probably a couple special moves, crouching A, B, C, D, jumping A, B, C, D, maybe a command normal here or there, BD, throw, air throw. You have a bunch of stuff you can do. But logically, there's not too many things you can do when you're moving around the screen, depending on how far or how close you are to the opponent. So say Mitsuru, right? If you are air dashing at Mitsuru and Mitsuru's in the air, she's not really going to do anything but jump A. You can pretty much narrow down their options to a couple of things. So the important thing then is to, if you're going to make a move, is select which one is the one that they're most likely to do and stop it. Stop it or beat it, depending on what side you're on. Like whether you're zoning or turtling or you want to go in. If you want to give a Street Fighter context, like if Ryu's full screen, He's gonna be throwing fireballs. He has no reason to just DP unless you're playing Sim and he's feeling himself and he wants to DP your Crouching Fierce. That's it. There's no other reason for him to do DP. He'll probably do a fireball. He's not really at a disadvantage for just throwing out a fireball. The closer you are though, the more options both of you are likely to have, so it will be more difficult to figure out what they're going to do, and the riskier it is to try to figure out exactly what they're going to do. It's, in my experience, because this is about like playing to win, like trying to win tournaments, trying to win matches. You want to minimize risk. Minimizing risk is important, especially depending on what kind of character you're playing. Minimizing risk. So if you're mid-range against a fast character, and say I play characters, they have good range, but their pokes are generally not fast. So I have to place my moves carefully. So if I'm mid-range to someone, and my options will primarily be move, like hit a button for a poke, one of my standard pokes, or reposition myself, or sit and watch them, and they can do like jump, run at me, X move, Y move. They have a lot of moves that hit at that range. Then I might lean towards watch them or move away rather than hit the poke, even though I would hit the poke sometimes. So summary is, the closer you are to the opponent, the harder it is to know what they're going to do. So you really have to know matchups. You have to make sure you prepare matchups so you know what they're likely to do, and then because it's a two-sided. There's two reasons why you want to play a lot of matches and have matchup experience. It's not just knowing the character, but it's also knowing players. So you could play, if you've played a bunch, either a really strong user of one character or multiple people playing the same character, then it'll be easier for you to figure out what someone is likely to do in those situations. So, but there are other situations where, I mean, because pretty much the whole game you have to worry about what your opponent is going to do and what you're going to do to them. When you're attacking them, you're generally considered to be at an advantage, depending on what game you're playing. Sometimes you might not always be at advantage, even though you're attacking, but you're pretty much at an advantage. So again, it's the same thing. You want to prepare, like you want to know. So you want to know what the character can do, i.e. how good is their DP, how fast are their pokes, how fast can they match out, how good is their backdash, do they have a special jump that's faster than other characters, all sorts of things you might want to look at. And then you want to plan for that. Or is it a game that has alpha counters, because then you have to pay attention to their meter for other reasons other than DP or super or whatever. And the same goes for defense. When they're attacking you, if you're playing a game with chains and these chains are set, like an Arxis game, you want to know the chains. You want to know their gatlings, as they're called in Arxis games. So you excuse me. You want to know, well, a good example is with Aegis. Aegis only has one jump cancelable move. It's her standing A. Once she does standing A to you, all of her strings are weak against counter assault. Like, they all lose the alpha counters. Unless she uses meter, unless she does a B Orgia change, so she changes modes off a couple of normals and backs off, or she does standing B into EX change. Those are the only ways she could bait it. So, since players, and you learn this through matchup experience, if you're in the corner and they're in normal mode and they want to switch off her standing C because it has a lot of blocks on. So once you block her standing B, it's a free alpha counter out. So if you have a lot of matchup experience and you've played against, you don't have to particularly play against a lot of players. If you have matchup experience, playing a lot of players definitely helps. Then you can play someone new, not have played them before, but still have an idea of what they're going to do because you played the matchups, you prepared, you know what people do already, and you have like answers for it. People do the same things. Very important to know. A lot of people will play similarly. You'll notice the more you play, people will play similarly. You'll notice people do the same things a lot, especially depending on what character they use. The bigger the player pool, the more variety there might be, but you'll see the same things over and over, and you'll see people, as far as you attacking them go, react the same ways. So what it becomes then is more of putting it in the context of a tournament is you'll have this assumption. So instead of a read implies that you think they're going to do this just straight out. For me, an assumption is different because it's more of I'm going to do this, so they're definitely going to do this because they see me doing this. There's when you play a lot and get a lot of matches under your belt, you'll notice a ton of these, a ton of these. Examples, Street Fighter 4 is something I'm noticing when their back is to the wall and I'm too far away to touch them, but close enough to punish whiffs. If I just focus, if I charge up focus, they'll jump, and then I dash up in DP and catch them out of their jump. I actually didn't do that today, and I'm very sad, but it's something I've noticed, and I was doing it at TFC. I was like, oh, free hits. Or Persona, Mitsuru doing down B sweep. That hits people all day long. All day, because they all stand up. They're expecting the rising jump B, instant overhead. Other games, trying to think. Vampire Saber, when people get up, I do a dash medium kick because it hits later. I'm assuming they're going to crouch attack on wake up, and I'm usually correct. Or I'll do a mine because it hits later, so it'll hit them out of their crouch tech. The more you play, the more you'll notice these things that everyone does, and you can take advantage against everyone. So then, when you have a lot of those small things you can take advantage of that that you assume everyone does because you've seen it, and you've punished it. So it's I said that wrong. You've seen it over and over, and so when you're playing a new player and you get in that situation, your default decision is going to be, well, other players who use this character who get into this situation do this. So this guy is probably going to do this too, especially if it's someone you haven't heard of. Talking about tournaments, right? So if it's someone you haven't heard of, it's a pretty safe decision to make. Another point about reading opponents, and something very important. I think this is huge actually. I've had this thought for a while. This rule, not even a thought, it's a rule. If you see someone do something one time, that means that's on the table. It's on the table. Boom. They put it on the table. So talking about that guy who does the full screen DP, if he does a full screen DP, it's on the table. Especially if he does it twice. If he does it once, maybe that kind of a thing is an outlier, right? If he does it once, maybe give him the benefit of the doubt. If he does it twice, it's on the table. That's it. on the table. Something he does. When I see someone do something that falls outside of my plan, and I see them do it one time, or if to word this another way, if I put someone, we're gonna use attacking again. You attack them, you knock them down, and let's say you have a setup that beats 3 out of 4 options. But the 4th option is really unsafe, so you just do this option that beats the 3, and the guy just does the 4th one from the start. Then he put that on the table. Boom. Put it on the table. You'll run into some players who won't put that on. They won't do it. It's not. Oh, it's risky. It's really risky. You shouldn't do it. Excuse me. The moment you see something ridiculous or strange, that makes you go, okay, okay, it's on the table. Boom. So, putting this in the context of tournaments. What does this mean? What you want to do then, what your plan would be is optimally, and this is how I feel, of course, if you have enough matchup experience against characters, and the best case scenario is like, not only do you have matchup experience against the character, but you've played multiple people who play the same character, because people will play characters differently and they'll react to situations differently, even though they have all the same options. Then you can have a series of assumptions that you can use to get you through the tournament. So the real goal is, because if you think about the flow of a tournament, so you have your pools, then you have your semifinals, your top 32, top 16, then you have your top 8. So top 8 is going to be, if all goes well, the best players at the tournament. Pools are going to have a lot of not so strong players, decent players, beginners, intermediate players, blah blah blah. And semifinals will be mostly decent, like intermediate and above. So if you have all this matchup experience, and like I said, hopefully against more than one player of multiple skill levels, that's even better. That's the best, actually. Then you can go into a match and have your set of assumptions ready so that you can just play. So then what happens is that because you're already prepared and have all these situations ready, prepared for, you know how to handle them, you know what people are likely to do, most likely to do, then it looks like you're reading the opponent all the time. But what you're really doing is just you have a set of assumptions ready, and that the person is just falling into them. Because we're talking about tournament, it's like 2 out of 3. The best for me is when I can just play. Like when I could sit down, play a person, they play exactly how they're going. They play exactly how I assume they're going to play. As in, when we're playing neutral, I know one thing about him, punish him for that, knock him down, put him in the corner, kill him. Either he dies to mix-ups, or he tries to get out certain ways that I've prepared for, and I punish him for it. That's optimal for me. So you don't really use extra effort. Like, you have your plan. The effort was creating your plan, and then you just play. So especially for pools, this is great. This is great because it takes no effort on your part in the actual tournament. The hardest part about a tournament, still talking about reading opponents, the hardest part about playing in tournament, and also the most fun part, is playing a really strong player. Because your base assumptions are not going to be correct against a strong player. Your base assumptions, they will sometimes do things that fall into your base assumptions, but they, excuse me, they won't always. They'll have other options, and they'll be far more knowledgeable about how to deal with things, how to adapt, and be in a situation, but be random in how they approach it. That's that's what's fun, and pretty much the challenge of fighting games, the challenge of the end of a tournament, if your goal is to win the tournament, because the last guy you're going to play is going to be able to do this. Like the last opponent you have, your grand final, your winner's final, your loser's final, your grand final, those, they will all be able to do that. If they if they can't do it, it's probably a free as fuck tournament, right? It's probably free. But at the beginning, so this question again, how do you go about reading your opponents? So now that we went through that and how to create assumptions and what an assumption is. So this is let's say the answer. So at the base, you have your assumptions. You go into a match and you have your assumptions. You go into a match, let's say later in the tournament, you go into a match, you play off your assumptions, and your opponent, does something that's outside of that assumption. From here, you can go two ways. One, they do something outside of your base assumptions, but it's something you already knew about and considered as an option already. So, it's like what I said before. You put it on the table. They put it on the table, and you're like, okay, you're gonna do this, that's on there. Number two is they do something that you haven't prepared for, or you haven't seen, and just is just like, what? This could be all sorts of things. The number two is the mystery, so this could be all sorts of things. Uh, what do you do when you see number two? First off, you have to think, why is number two happening in the first place? Is it because I don't know the matchup? Is it because there's a couple of reasons why, and I'm going to say the reasons from my experience. Don't know the matchup. Number two is you know the matchup, but you only have played one player of the character. This has happened to me plenty. This happened to me plenty. What character can I use as an example? Aegis. Aegis is a good example. The only Aegis I played for a long time was Digiops from New York. Digiops from New York. Okay. I thought, okay, I know how to play against Aegis. I know Aegis' shit kind of okay. I know how to play against Aegis. I played a net play Aegis who stomped me like 7-1. I was like, what the fuck just happened? I got destroyed by this Aegis. Why did I lose this Aegis? I thought about it. There were many things, many situations in A, neutral, B, when I was attacking him. Actually, no, not when I was attacking him. A, neutral, and B, when I was getting attacked, that he didn't treat like the Aegis I practiced against. So even though I played a pretty good player, Diop's pretty good with Aegis, a pretty good player of that character, a good amount, I played another player who was pretty good at that character, and he played differently, and it destroyed me. So what you want, the optimal is to not just know the matchup, as in, I shouldn't say the matchup, know the character, the enemy character, what they can do in neutral game, attacking you, defending you, but what do players like to do with the character in neutral, attacking, defending, and their cues. People will give you cues. People will give you cues that you can pick up on. So using, again, Aegis as an example. Digiops doesn't like to use 2B very much against the New York scene because everyone rolls. Everyone rolls. We stand at a range where we just wait for the roll and we roll it and we run up. Great. So I'll get to a point where I get a little confident and I'll just run in. I'll do dwa. I'll just lunge across the screen. I'm coming for you! Right? Across the screen. Whatever. This other Aegis player I played, also 2Bs, but he is not worried about the roll. In Orgia mode, he will 2B and hold forward. If it whiffs, he doesn't do anything. If it's blocked, he flies in. And that is it. That is it. And I was like, man, okay, he did it a couple of times. I thought, alright, he's just gonna do this. He doesn't give a fuck. I'm gonna wait for it. But I gave him credit. I gave him credit anyway. And he kept doing it. And I was like, you know what? My universal thing now against Aegis will be to stand at this spot, position myself in this spot where I can roll the 2B, anti-air her air dash, jump C, and be out of range of super jump, air turn, jump B. I'll just stand there. They can't do anything. They have to come to me, or they have to stand there. And I'm totally fine with just standing. I'm alright. I'm Mitsu. I'm totally fine with just standing and waiting for them. It's cool. But what happened? I beat this guy 7-0 the next time he played. So, in the end, that's the end. That's the end of my anecdote of how do you deal with the mystery. The mystery is the most difficult thing to deal with in tournament. What will happen later towards the end of a tournament, and this is like hopeful, but this is what it should be, is you'll play an opponent who doesn't fall into your assumptions, but you're familiar with everything, like you know everything that can happen in situations. So it turns into more or less a fight to put the other person into whatever your game plan is. Would you say dealing with mystery requires a good knowledge of the game to understand what and why they're doing what they did? Yes. If someone, honestly, if someone does some shit to you that you don't understand why you got hit by it, you don't understand how to deal with it, and it looks like a good thing, then you should go back and figure out what it is. Like, you shouldn't let that work 100%. For sure. You shouldn't let that work at all. You should try to find a... You should become familiar with it, know what it is. The easiest, and putting this into a process too, the easiest thing is to know what it is visually. Because fighting games are visual, right? So, let's say... What should I use for this example? Let's say you've never played against Yukiko before, but you know like a thing or two, and you know she throws fans, she has unblockable setup, blah blah blah. And she's mid-screen and she does skill boost Agi. So they're double fireballs, and she sets up an unblockable off that. I quickly got to the point where I was like, where I thought, I don't want this to be a free hit on me anymore. I need to figure out how they set this up, and what do I do about it. I went into training mode, found out. Well, you don't even need to find out. It just takes a quick look on YouTube and watch any good Yukiko player, and they all do this. They all do this. So I write down how they go into it. I go into training mode, practice going into it because Yukiko is kind of weird if you don't play her. Get used to doing it. Set her to record doing it, and then I mess around with things that could beat it until I find something that does beat it, which is I being the first hit of the fire and then jumping. That's how I get out. And from then on, I don't really get hit by that anymore, which is great. Now, Again, we're talking about tournaments. Remember, most all these games are 2 out of 3. That's the power. That's the power of assumptions for the format. When you're playing, especially when you're playing a single elim tournament, either a single elim tournament or 2 out of 3, you probably won't run into a single elim tournament often. 2 out of 3 is what you're going to generally see. Unless you play Marvel, then you're going to play 3 out of 5. And you will see either 2 out of 3 winners finals, losers finals, and then a 3 out of 5 grand final, or a 3 out of 5 finals across the board. So the power of assumptions is that you can go into a game without having to worry about. So again, the original question, how do you go about reading opponents? So the word read to me, I say hard read. Hard read as in, like, you're saying by your action, your statement is, you are going to do this. That's a hard read. The power of assumptions is that you don't need to do that, which is very beneficial because too many things can happen in a fighting game. It's very strong to have a series of base assumptions to start off, as like a jump off. What might mess with you are people who, and I've run into this, you might run into this. You're playing some guy in casuals. He is pretty conservative. He's actually really conservative. He just blocks all day, kind of turtly, whatever. And you run into the same guy in tournament, all of a sudden he's mashing DP and block stun. He's just running at you. It's all stuff total opposite. What do you do? What would you do, stream? What would you do? Tell me, stream chat. You play a guy in casuals, win or lose. He plays conservative the whole time. Never DPs, never wake up backdash, never whatever defensive mechanics. Then play him in tournament, wake up super, DP and hit stun, DP and block stun, going nutty. What would you do? Depends on the character, Omacross says. What else? I want a couple other answers. What would you do? Tom Brady says knockdown kill him. But he's super strong, so it's true. Turtle him back. Play him like a nut. Play more conservative and solid him out. Wouldn't get phased. I'd start to bait and see if he stops going nuts. Just start over with a new table. I like that answer. I usually get killed by this. Whoa, shit. Try my best to adjust. New table, okay. So out of these answers, play the right answer. The best answer on here, the best answers on here are I wouldn't get phased and knockdown kill him. Why are these the best answers? Why are these the best answers? So, we're talking about outside of tournament, he plays really safe. Inside of tournament, he plays like a nut on purpose. He does on purpose too. But if you are like before, ready for the tournament with preparation, like you, as we said, you know matchups, and you played multiple people who play that character, and you play this guy in casuals, and he's being conservative, and you play him in tournament. So this is what would happen to me. So the first round, you notice right away that it wouldn't be right away. It would be gradually, maybe halfway through the round or one round, that he is clearly playing different because you're going into the same situations, and rather than being conservative in all these situations, he is choosing the most risky choice, the quote-unquote random choice, DP and block some, blah blah blah, nutty stuff, people would say. So once he shows you this a couple of times, Because I guess DPing blocks on you wouldn't, even though it's on the table, you wouldn't want someone to do DPing blocks on one time and all of a sudden you peel off. Like that's that. What would happen is, and what you should do is, even though they're playing like that, when you get in those situations where it's even a factor, because it's not always going to be a factor. Like in a neutral game, them being a nut, them being random or disrespectful would be them just running at you, depending on the range. And then them being disrespectful to you when you're attacking them would be mashing, DPing, like stuff that they didn't do in casuals, based on the situation we're describing, right? But you would already have things prepared for nutty players, for players who play like that. So the first round, you lose because he mashed DP out of block stuns 3 times, he just ran at you at the start of the round, and then he killed you some shit. Okay, great, round 2. Round 2, you would lean towards options, I'm not saying going all in, lean towards options that beat the nuttiness, that beat the randomness. And then if it works, great. And Tom Brady said, I would knock them down, kill him. That's because he plays a set play character. But he's right though. That's what I think with my characters too. That's how I feel with my characters too. Like, oh, this guy's being really random and just doing whatever. Rather than worrying about it, I will wait to hit him. And once I hit him and knock him down, I am in complete control. I'm in total control of his match. He can do whatever he wants, try to do whatever he wants really, and I can still take this and win. So the real answer is you shouldn't let that phase you. It's just another set of options a player is showing you. If you get freaked out and get caught up in the randomness, like, man, he's being random, I should bait, you're just gonna lose. Or it's going to be much more difficult than it should be. It's a little bit of an anecdote, but when I was at last year's NEC, when the Japanese came, when Soji, Kirisame, Dora came, right? I played them. I went a day early to play them. I wanted to play them real bad because it was the first time that real, like the top of the top level came for anime, right? The top of the top. So I wanted to play them. So a couple of other people were there too. Not too many. It was like, I think 4 or 5 at the most. And we had 3 setups. So, excuse me. I got to play, I played Soji about 30-40 games. Kirisame 30 games. Dora and BB not too much. Like about 10-15 games. And of course I was watching them too because I wanted to try to figure out, like, what am I going to do to beat these guys? And what I noticed, I already had this in my own playstyle, but I noticed throughout the weekend, and especially this struck me with Soji, right? So if you saw that tournament, that top 16 match is not on YouTube, but still on Twitch. Should still be on Twitch. Soji, the buckets were coming down. The buckets, caused confusion, spin state. And I attacked him and he DP'd. He DP'd me, the buckets hit, he did run up AOA. And I bursted, right? And everyone's like, oh yeah, good burst, okay. You don't want to be raged and confused. That's stupid. But on Thursday night, that same situation happened. I hit him. Buckets are coming down. I hit him, he DP'd my hit. Buckets came down, and he did the AOA reset. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that was a thing. And then all of a sudden I take 6,000 damage. I'm like, what the fuck? And then it clicked that he reset me with AOA spin state and rage. But he did it in tournament also. Soji, the 3 of them, they play casuals and tournament exactly the same. Exactly. Actually, me too, for the most part. Play casual and tournament exactly the same. They don't sandbag. They just play. They just play with their series of assumptions out. Like, this is how I'm going to handle neutral when you're close to me, far away from me, when we're both mid-screen, your back to the corner, my back to the corner, I'm attacking you, how much meter you have, what character we're playing, what kind of knockdown I got. All sorts of possible situations, but they have something ready for everything. They have what they're going to do by default. They have what they think you're going to do by default, and they have their answer for it. And they play exactly the same. The only difference is maybe they'll have like a little trick or gimmick they'll toss in there. But that's it. Not much beyond that. Exactly the same. So when the same situation came up in tournament, I tried to attack again. He did the same thing. This time I was ready. I was like, oh snap, this will actually fucking kill me. I need to burst. So I bursted. I was like, not happening. Not giving you this AoA into 6k. No. No. So, summary. What you want in the end is not to go about reading your opponent. It's perfectly fine to make reads, especially if you're playing a read character. There's some characters that are designed around that. But what you want is to prepare and have a series of assumptions ready for who you're playing, not even who you're playing against, the character, and then hopefully the skill level too of what your potential opponent is, so that you're never caught unaware. And being caught unaware is the absolute worst thing that could happen to you in tournament. If you can deal with that, that story about John Choi versus Alex Valle in the Valle CC, that's like miracle level shit. That's beautiful. Like, being able to deal with something like that in tournament and almost win. I think he lost anyway, right? He lost anyway, but he didn't get scraped by it. Like, to be quite honest, if that was me, like if I was playing against that, I never saw that, I'd probably die. I would die, be like, what the fuck was that? And then later be ready for it. Not likely be in that situation where he's doing this to me, what the fuck's going on? I don't know what the mechanic is exactly, but, or what the trick is, but if it was something that ridiculous, I don't honestly think I'd be able to just deal with it right then and there. That's miracle level shit. Alright, I'm gonna field some questions for like 10 minutes. 10 minutes on this topic. Any questions? What happens if you're playing a game where knockdown is not that important? So you're talking about for when that situation where you have the guy who, excuse me, plays you one way outside of tournament, and then when you play him in tournament, he plays a completely different way. What happens when you play him in a game where knockdown is not that important? Well, the other answer, like I said, was you don't want to be phased by it. So that still counts. You don't want to be phased by it. You want to adjust for it. And it's, like I said, definitely good if you have things prepared for that type of play. So say they're really mashy. They didn't mash before, and all of a sudden they're mashing like crazy. So you would slightly alter your pressure a little bit just to look for mashing. Something safe. A good example is if you watch BB players, they do this a lot. They'll do crouching jabs into a standing heavy normal, standing C or crouching C, and if the opponent is mashing, automatic counter it, and it does a lot of damage. You'll see that a lot. Um, Persona, Persona, you won't see that with a lot of, excuse me, a lot of characters because the way people do pressure is differently. But you will see, like, Mitsuru, you see like AA delay B instead of just AA. You can mash that, or you can mash AAA into a sweep feint or something, but you can't mash a AAA into standing B or sweep. So I would just do that if I was looking for mashing. So whatever thing they are doing to make their playstyle different than what it was before, especially because for that situation we're talking about, we're talking about a real big turnaround in playstyle, like a really big one. So even though it's a really big turnaround in playstyle, you only need to make a small pivot, like a small shift in what you have to do if you stick to your plan and you're not fazed by it and affected by it. Other questions? Marvel, huh? Yeah, Marvel. If I played Marvel, I don't play Marvel, but I would definitely just stick to my game plan. Because I feel like doing something random, like going from playing conservative to playing nutty in Marvel isn't... It's like a team thing, you know? There's some... You wouldn't expect a zoning team, I guess, to be vague. To some guy playing a zoner just charge you down all of a sudden, I think. Do you think the on-the-table discussion is what holds back intermediate players who have general mechanics down? I think what holds back intermediate players varies depending how they reach their current level. There's all sorts of things that could be holding a player back at that point. But that definitely could be one of them. I think the main thing about intermediate players is that they don't have a lot of the... Actually, a lot of the things I want to talk about on this show in mind or developed. And it's not just saying patience. Like, there's a lot of possible things between everything from not knowing certain matchups, not optimizing certain things, not exploring their characters, not excuse me, and not knowing matchups is half on them because you can do... There's a ton of resources available. You just go on YouTube and look stuff up. Laziness, just like stuff on their own playstyle, like they're too twitchy, too angsty, too anxious, too lazy, not patient, too conservative. They don't have like a balance. Like, it's fine to have a kind of style. Like, I know some people think I'm a rush down player, but I personally think I'm a little on the conservative side. Not angsty, like antsy, like as in they respond, they're too twitch, like their reactions, they have like a twitch reaction to things, and you can abuse that. Um, or it could be things like they can't adapt quickly, and by adapt quickly, they're just not ready for that sort of thing. I mean, there's all sorts of things that make an intermediate player an intermediate player. I don't think I'm a rush down type because I don't know. I feel like I play conservative. Like when I'm in on a player, I'm in there. So if that's rushed down to you, then okay. Because once I touch a person, then I'm like, okay, this is where I'm great, and I can do all this shit I just practiced by myself and kill them. And I need to not use that word. But anyway, so like with Mitsuru, I'm going to, like when I'm playing the boss character, I'm not going to go nuts and go in on the boss character. She has too many ways to keep me out, while at the same time controlling space. I'm going to look for things that I can do to kind of keep it even and kind of keep her at bay. And then once I'm actually by her and at a range where I can do stuff, I'll do stuff. I'll do what I need to do. Like I feel like in my heart I'm conservative because I like being in situations where I'm not at a disadvantage, which would imply that I like being at an advantage all the time, both defensively, offensively, and neutral, which means I don't have to necessarily do so many things that are unsafe. That's what I like to be. I don't like to be unsafe, so I consider myself to be more conservative. I'm interested to hear how you form your assumptions that you use to play. How do you go about analyzing your character's tools and forming an overall game plan of how to handle a match? This actually has to do with some later topics that I want to talk about, but essentially, so I I play mainly Arc Sys games and now learning SF4, right? So people have been playing this game before me, so I'm not going to be cocky and think I'm going to come up with stuff that no one has thought of when I just started the character. I'm going to see what the best players of my characters does, take that, pretty much copy all of it, write it all down, copy all of it, practice it, learn it, and then play. After playing and winning and losing, I'll see what happened with my wins, what happened with my losses, and what can I fix to get better. Because the main thing is about copying from footage that I want to talk about later too, is that since I like watching the best players in my character, they play, it will be like, I'll watch grand finals or something. So they're playing another player who may be equally skilled. And so this, going back to what we talked about before, this is two players who both have sets of assumptions and can both move and select different options very freely in different situations. When you're playing random players online, they're not going to be like that. You're not going to find that caliber of player very often, if at all, online, right? So you have to take what you're taking from that person you're watching, take your experiences, and find a middle that you can use for yourself. And that's how I build my playstyle. Eventually, it becomes my own playstyle. If you don't adapt very well, it's probably a mix of you haven't played enough, you don't have enough experience, and you you might not self-reflect on what you're doing, like what's actually happening. One of the three, in my opinion. What do you think are the pros and cons of the big ego mindset, the I'm better than this guy, whether or not it's actually true? That that's something else I wanted to talk about too. Not today in to like at length, but when I play someone who has a play style that they're saying with their play, I'm better than you, it's a little easy to deal with them because you know they'll likely make a lot more hard reads because they're hard reads, or I should say this wrong. I said that wrong. You have an idea of what they're going to do, a more specific idea, because since they're playing like, oh, you're not good, I'm better than you, ha ha ha, they will do things that will say through the action, I'm better than you. So it's actually a little easier to read them. Outright read them. Remember it. In my head, I have a difference between reads and assumptions. So reads, remember, is I know what you're going to do. So people who have a playstyle like that, to me, are easier to read because you have a better idea of what they're going to do. Because they're going to do things that say, I'm better than you. This is the guy that does just like the jump air throw multiple times in a row in Street Fighter, or I'm trying to think of when was the last time I played someone like that though, who was good at P4U, BB. Oh, there was a guy I played in BB. I remember. Even actually P4. What am I saying? P4. I started when I came back from my God's Garden trip. I started to mash A. The first time I came back from Japan, I started to mash attacks like jabs, A's, whatever, out of pressure more because of what happened to me while I was there, how people played and stuff. With Mitsuru, I thought her standing jab is too slow. Standing A is too slow. I'm not going to mash standing A because it is too slow, and I'll get hit. But people, because remember my handle, I made a new PSN ID, so people didn't. Only my friends knew what my new ID was. So when I'd run into a new player, all they would do is bait DP. All they would do is bait DP. So they would do some short little string and just block. I was like, alright, fine. The moment I saw that once, I just start mashing standing A out of pressure. That gives me the advantage. Punishes them for assuming I'm going to DP like that. Like right away too. And because their skill level wasn't too high, it took them a while to adapt to it. It's really good if you can identify those kind of things. Alright, I'll take one more question because we're at an hour. Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point. So goes to saying, I feel like this is my mindset, not my playstyle. It makes me want to get better via getting beat by people who I think are not better than me. But I wonder if I should just eat some humble pie. That's actually, I'll be real, that's the hardest part of learning a new game. Because I feel like I'm better than this person, but I'm not better than this person at this game. It's not fair to think that. It's not fair to think that at all. You have to actually get good at it. So even if you have the instinct, the knowledge, the experience, ow, that hurt. Whoops. You have to take the knowledge and experience you have and put it into another shell, and then rebuild what you had. It kind of sucks, but at the same time, it's fun. As long as you're playing a fun character and you see constant progress, it's fun. But yes, one last question. If not, I'll wrap it up. Yes, I said that. I said for a while. The reason why I feel like some BB players don't like P4 is that P4 is faster and it's a higher damage game, so you actually can get away with being quote-unquote nutty. Up to a certain point though. Nutty does not work at the highest level. Unless you're playing boss character. And even then, it's not even nutty. It's like a controlled randomness that's necessary. To me, that kind of game is really it's an accomplishment. If you're good at P4, that's an accomplishment. Because being good at P4 means you can beat Narukami, Chie, Mitsuru, and Aegis. and they are pretty hard to beat. Like, they do a lot of damage. They're pretty fast. They all have really good mix-ups, and they do a lot of damage. So if you're beating them, if you can beat all those characters, that's something. What about the opposite mindset, where you think you're worse than people and lose to those who you are better than, but deal well with those who are better than you? That's the worst, actually. You have to... That's a mental thing. You can't... It kind of... I have this... That kind of thing, too. That's a topic I want to talk about, too. Like, how you feel. That's a bad thing. Self-confidence, overall. I could talk about self-confidence forever, because it honestly does bother me sometimes what people say about my play, but then at the same time, I know, like, I have confidence in myself. I've done things that other players have not done. I beat a lot of people. Like, you have to... So for me, in my case, I just remind myself that I can just let my play speak for itself. It's fine. It is fine, fine, fine. Especially for me, because I honestly do not like losing. It took me a long time to get over losing. And it took me a long time to handle losing. It took me a long time to, even though for a long time, I knew matches vary, etc. It took me a long time to be able to say, well, in the ideal world where I'm the best, there'll be some other guy who's as good as I am, so it's going to be 5-5. Like, I'm not going to 10-0 this person. So for me, it's reminding myself that, like, my play speaks for itself, and consistency. Like, as long as I keep up the consistency, it doesn't matter if people say some shit like, I got second at Summer Jam. Boo-hoo, right? I won TFC. And I didn't just win TFC. I will also won CEO, and Civil War, and Final Round, and Season Beatings. And I've only gotten under third at a major one time. One time. So for me, it's just remembering I'm very consistent, and my play speaks for itself. But when you're not there, that's like hard. You have to just... Because I was there too. You can't let that bother you. You have to just not worry about it. You can't let that bother you, because you want to put positive thoughts into your mind about playing. You don't want to put negative thoughts like, I'm worse than everyone. Because if you think you're worse than everyone and you lose to just randoms, and then you do okay against good people but they're beating you anyway, then you're just losing to everyone. So if your goal is winning, then you're just losing to everyone, which is the total opposite of your goal, and that sucks. That's an episode of itself, though. That's an episode in and of itself. So that's pretty much it for today. Um, I will do this Thursday. Tomorrow is Battle Circuit, so I'm not going to do this tomorrow. It's going to suck if I do this tomorrow. I'll do it on Thursday night. I don't really care about the run back. The run back would be starting when this is finishing, so it's okay.